Alrighty, welcome everyone. My name is Isabel Wright. I'm the Career Services Specialist here at Rossier, and I'm so excited to be doing a presentation, a workshop on networking tips in preparation for our Networking with the Higher Ed Pros this upcoming Friday. So with that, this is a layout of our agenda. I anticipate that we will be going over this and that we'll have ample time for questions at the end of this workshop. So please feel free to fire away with questions either during the presentation and or after as well. So this event will be in person, and I highly recommend that you all research the attendees beforehand. I sent out an email last week, as well as I think it was earlier this week, of the list of attendees, alumni guests um, who will be there to network and connect with our Rossier students. It's important to look them up on LinkedIn and identify where they've worked or where they're currently working so that you have an easier time navigating of all the alumni guests who you want to talk to, prioritizing those folks, as well as what kind of questions you might want to ask them as well. After the end of this, I will also showcase our program where you'll see everybody's bios, and then we'll also send that out via email too. So when you're networking, whether it's this upcoming event or in general, both in person or virtually, it's so important to have a goal in mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be ambitious, even if you just want to connect with 5 people. I would say quality over quantity is really important. I would also prioritize having a goal and giving it will help you have a sense of purpose and understanding of what it is you want to extract from this event. Again, whether in person or remote. It also holds you accountable to really prioritize who you're talking to, what kind of questions you're going to ask, and what kind of information you also want to provide as well as you either find a new job, switch careers, expand your network, or you're just looking to connect as well. Possible goals could be that you just want to talk to someone who works for an institution that you hope to work for. Another opportunity, another goal could be that you want to look at someone who has a similar title that you might want to aspire to be at the end of your program. Or you just want to learn more about what is the difference between working at a private versus a public institution or a 2-year or 4-year institution. So having these goals in mind and the purpose will be really helpful. Now, it's important to also prepare conversation starters. This doesn't have to be complex. I will say it should be more like a conversation. So whether, you're introverted, extroverted, it still requires some prep work. I would say come with a list of questions or bullet points of types of questions or conversation starters that you might want to present when you meet someone, and be flexible with if you don't ask all your questions because the conversation was so organic and took off in its own way. That is also okay. In general, I would steer clear from asking questions that enable one-worded answers, as well as providing only one-worded answers. It's important to ask meaningful questions and know that the more information you give, the more opportunities it is for that person to connect or relate to what you have to say and to relate to you. So an example of that is if at the beginning of a conversation you want to say, where are you from? Or someone asks you, where are you from? I, for example, could say, oh, I'm from Pasadena, which is from the City of Roses, or which is called the City of Roses. And, we're known for the Rose Parade. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but blah, 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 blah. So I'm not just saying Pasadena. I'm drawing it out. I'm finding other ways that maybe you can connect or relate or, oh, I've seen the Rose Parade. I didn't know that was from Pasadena, and have that kind of dialogue come up organically because you're giving out more information. You can also ask what they think about the latest industry news or development. There's a lot happening in higher ed, so staying abreast with those type of trends and what's going on, the news, I think is really important, especially if, let's just say, you want to learn more about um, four-year institutions and you've researched, the recent news on finances within four-year research institutions and grants. That's something that you can also talk about as well. So just something to keep in mind as you're thinking about conversation starters. And then, of course, asking about themselves. So, what are your interests outside of higher ed? How did you get into higher ed? Can you shed light on what your experience was like as an undergrad in a blah, blah, blah institution or four-year institution or transfer, things of that sort, I think could be really helpful and help get your conversation started. I always like to lead with compliments, like genuine compliments, not just like, oh, let me just try to kiss up compliments. But if something really wows me or has caught my attention with someone, I will make sure that they know that. And it can one way to start that is if you were to research someone's LinkedIn profile, for example, and you notice that, maybe you went to Long Beach City College and they are now working at Long Beach City College, and you've seen their career kind of progress steadily via their LinkedIn, I would say that. I would say, oh, I went to Long Beach City College and I noticed that you also worked there or that you worked there and that you steadily progressed in your career. That's incredible. How did you do that in such a short period of time? What are some tips or advice that you might impart on me that I can learn from you or something like that? It kind of it takes the edge off. It puts people at ease. It makes them feel warm to you. You're essentially warming up the room, if you will. And, it's nice for alums, it's nice for guests to also take a pause and really realize like how much they've accomplished and the fact that people are looking to them for advice on how much they've done and things of that sort. I talked about this, asking questions, and in general, people enjoy and feel comfortable talking about themselves. If you ask questions, you'll help them to feel relaxed. Um, you know, it's important, like I said, to do the research on what they do, but also go in deeper, dive in deeper when you meet with someone, whether it's in person or even virtually, such as I saw on your LinkedIn that you are the director of Res Life at Caltech. How did you get into Res Life? What was that process like? And what does your day look like in Res Life at a four-year private institution? Or what kind of projects are you working on or have you worked on? What's been a really big challenge for you? What do you can also ask, if you're hiring, what do you look for in candidates? This is not necessarily a job fair, but it is a networking opportunity where you can ask questions like that. Whereas you can say, I'm graduating in May. I'm interested in blank and I'm working on my elevator pitch. I'm working on my interview styles. As someone who works in a position that I hope to aspire to have down the line, what are some things, what qualities do you look for in someone who wants to work in Res Life or in student affairs, etc.? How did you get in enrollment management? I think that could be really insightful and showcases you're not necessarily asking them for a job. So you can kind of have relief in that, but you're asking like, what should I be working on so that I can be someone, hireable or who I can be someone like in your shoes, I think is important and very okay and appropriate to ask. And then also, in addition to asking questions, it's important to be an active listener. So active listening involves listening and to understand the other person instead of listening so you know what you're going to say next. I think it's important to maintain good eye contact, have open-ended questions, avoid interrupting, and try to minimize distractions. So put yourself at ease knowing that these 14 alumni guests are here specifically to talk to people like you, to talk to Rossier students. When Maritza and I reached out to these folks, that is exactly what we led with. Like, we want our students to be able to connect with people like you. So know that they are very interested in connecting. They're alums, so they were once in your shoes quite recently, some a little bit further back, but nonetheless, Rossier is the common ground. So that should hopefully take the edge off and just go in with an open mind, learning more about how they got to where they are and what advice would they give, now that they are alums, looking back in hindsight when they were students, what would they say? What would they do differently? What would they do the same? I think would be really insightful. And remember that it's only a 2-hour window of networking. So you really have a short, if you will, period of time to just actively listen, make eye contact, make connections, and extract the most that you can out of this 2-hour event. I've mentioned throughout this whole thing to prioritize connections. So I also mentioned quality over quantity. It's more than just small talk. Like I said, you're not here to necessarily ask someone for a job. Even if, you are in the midst of looking for jobs or you're about to graduate, I think it's also important to lead with a genuine and authentic heart. Go in with it knowing that you can get something out of this that is bigger and greater in the long run than a job, which is a connection, perhaps even a mentor. If, depending on how the conversation goes, I think you don't have to necessarily be extroverted in order to make the most of this experience, make the most of this event. You just have to have the confidence to be able to put yourself out there, come up with some questions, have a strong elevator pitch, which we can talk about, and know that these people want to meet with you just as much as you want to meet with them. So there is that mutuality and that connection. Alongside with connections, I just wanted to insert 2 additional online platforms that also foster connections with not just Rossier, but USC alums. The Trojan Network, which I'm sure you all have heard of in orientation, just wanted to reignite that as well as LinkedIn. So the Trojan Network, everyone has access to. It is USC's exclusive professional networking and mentorship platform. You can access this on, I can send the link or drop it in the chat later, but you can access this on Handshake and essentially connect with USC alumni Rossier as well on this platform. You can also explore available jobs, internships, experiential learning opportunities, and ask questions from other fellow Trojans. So keep that in mind, something to think about. LinkedIn operates very similarly. If you follow the USC page and you click on alumni, you can actually see the alumni count. I'm sure it's higher now. And you can search based on keywords, industries that you might be interested in. And you can virtually see anybody who has a USC affiliation, whether they're students, alums, or professionals, and you can sort based on where they work, where they live, what they do, skills, etc. I highlight this because while Friday's event is in person, it's also important to take a similar mindset when you connect virtually as well. Someone who holds a position that you eventually want to have, or someone who maybe doesn't have the same position that you might want, but has a very interesting and inspiring career, I think could be really important. So that's that. And then also make note as a reminder and follow up, whether that's a mental note. I always like to have a pen and paper or an iPad, a portfolio, if you will, of who you talked to, what you all talked about, and a summary at the end of that event of what you can refer to. So something might look like, hi, Isabel. I thank you so much for taking time out of your day to meet with all of us at the Networking with the Hybrid Pros on Friday, April 4th. I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you or learning about res life at Caltech. And it was so interesting to hear about blah, 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 blah. As I mentioned, I'm really interested in this and would love to stay connected and perhaps continue the conversation and pick your brain about blah, 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 blah. Short, sweet, simple, to the point. Look forward to hearing from you soon. And the goal with that being to stay connected, to continue with the dialogue, continue with the conversation. And the most important thing is just take the time to send them that customized message because it will go a long way. And it's also important to stay connected. So again, you want to prioritize your goal, your purpose of going into this event, and not just with this event, but in general, when you network with other folks, prioritize what is the purpose and prioritize that connection with the person. Whether you follow up in a month or 2 months or a quarter's time period, I think is really important. And to also showcase, I'm not just in it for finding a job. I want to, and I genuinely, appreciate the time that you took out of your day to meet with us. And I really hope to foster and continue fostering this relationship and learning alongside you, because what you'll find is you now have cultivated this relationship, this connection with the person, and they're now going to be thinking about you for other future opportunities, whether they hear about it in their institution or if their other colleagues, whether in that same institution or colleagues outside of that institution, have other job openings. So there's so many benefits with staying connected in the long run as well. That's it. All right, I threw a lot out at you. So fire away with questions. How are we feeling with Friday's event or with networking in general? Okay, you're all pros. That's amazing. I'll tell you personal insights. I'm naturally kind of bubbly, extroverted to begin with, and sometimes networking is a little daunting for me as well. And I think what helps me, aside from the prep work, is reminding myself, okay, these people are here to meet with me if I just show my genuine, authentic self, which is I really do just want to learn from them. Like, how did they make the most of their Rossier experience? I'm interested in blank and I just want to know how they got there. You don't have to have a half-hour conversation with them. Even a few minutes could be really substantial and meaningful if you go in with intention. And as I've mentioned, you don't necessarily have to talk to all 14 guests. If you find 3, 4, 5, and you leave within a half hour, but you really felt like you've extracted the most that you possibly could, that is successful to me. So go in with that mindset, I would say. Go in with a mindset of, practicing your elevator pitch. I know we didn't have a slide on that, but I typically have different elevator pitches depending on what I'm going in for. So in an interview, when someone asks me, tell me about yourself, that in essence is a form of my elevator pitch, in which case I will say, my typical go-to move is a little bit about my education. So I received my Bachelor of Arts in Communication, my minor in Marketing here at USC Annenberg. I worked at career development. I realized I really like student affairs, so I got my degree in student affairs. I'll say the whole title if it's a job interview. And because I'm so interested in career services, I'm interested in your position, and I kind of segue through that a little bit. I'll probably add a little bit more flavor to my experiences to kind of like bulk it up, but that might be different than when I'm delivering my elevator pitch to a networking event such as this. It will be more personable and a little less, this is the structure of my education, my career, and this is what I'm interested in. It's more a little bit more informal. I'd introduce myself and thank them for their time and ask them, of course, how they are. I might even ask them a question first before kind of diving in about me. Because I think in general conversations, whether it's networking or just talking and meeting with someone, it's really hard to be like, hi, I'm Isabel, and this is what I'm doing. It's more like, hi, how are you? And thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you do in enrollment management or, things of that sort. Let's see. Tips on how to jump into a conversation, especially if it's within a group or So you can connect with the person. Great question. Thank you for that. The question was about how we can jump into a conversation, especially if it's within a group, so that you can connect with that person. And then also tips to exit as well. So I think because it's a multiple prong, let's start with the first one, which was how do you jump into the conversation? I think it's important to listen, actively listen. What are they talking about? Now you're on the flip side. What can you connect with? What can you relate to when someone is talking versus, I think the example I gave earlier was, how do you help someone else connect to you? So I would say listen with intention, actively listen to what they're talking about, and find ways that you connect with. So obviously you don't want to cut someone off. And if they're having a really meaningful dialogue, then perhaps you can step away and then come back if it's that intense of a dialogue. Or if you can find a way to connect and relate to what they're talking about, like, oh, City of Roses, that's awesome. I actually visited Pasadena for the first time and blah, 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 whatever. Or I didn't realize Caltech's campus is in Pasadena. That's wonderful. Have you tried blah, 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 blah? Or I did an internship in blank, 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 blank. So I think finding a way like to insert yourself based on what they're talking about is important, especially if someone has wrapped up their sentence, because like I said, you don't want to cut them off. And then of course, being okay with stepping out and then coming back into the conversation is also okay. Now, tips for exiting a conversation in case time is running out and you want to connect with others. Multiple answers to that. There's no right or wrong way. Well, I guess there's a wrong way, but there's multiple ways that you can go about doing this. If it's one-on-one, I think it's important to say, this is so wonderful. I'm really intrigued. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I want to save some time to talk to other folks around here, but if it's possible, can we continue this conversation via email, or can I connect with you on LinkedIn, or can I circle back with you in a few minutes once I've, made my way around the room? Those are three options. Alumni will be stationed at each table, so you are able to kind of, and they know, they've been prepped, I've told them this, that this is a networking event. So they are not going to take it personally if you want to talk to other people. This is sort of the purpose. So that's kind of very direct. Like if it's just you and that person, you can politely excuse yourself and say, I will follow up, or can I follow up via XYZ, LinkedIn direct message, LinkedIn's direct message or email, or circle back again in a few moments. If it's in a group setting, you might have a little easier chance to exit out because there's other folks around you. Sometimes, depending on how personable or how comfortable you are, I usually like to tell the alum, like kind of just squeeze onto the side and kind of say, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to circle back. I'll see you in a little bit. I think is also very much okay. If you didn't get to connect with someone in person, is it okay to reach out via email as the first time? I think it's okay. I think you can certainly introduce yourself quite quickly and ask them for their email address. I purposely didn't include that in the program because we're just, we're not sure if they want to release that. But I do think if it's a one-on-one setting or if it's an in-person setting, you can certainly ask, like, I'm so sorry I didn't get a chance to connect with you, but I did have a few questions, or I did want to connect with you. There was that intention. Can I follow up with you via email, or can I get your email address and perhaps schedule a time to talk to you maybe for 20 minutes next week or when your schedule permits? I think is entirely appropriate. These are great questions. Other questions? How are you feeling? Feelings check. Okay, so everyone's going to be super ready. Yes, one thing to keep note is the attire for the event. So it's not like the career fair where it's professional suit, tie, etc. This is business casual. So nice pair of pants, slacks, a blouse. You could have a blazer if you like, a sport coat if you would like. It is not necessary. One thing, and I've seen this on campus way too many times, please don't come in your pajamas. Maybe it's avant-garde to your circle of friends, but please, it doesn't look professional. I highly discourage that. But business casual, nice slacks, a blouse, coat would be fine. Other questions? Something that someone has not asked, but I has asked in the past is if they can bring their resume. Um, it's not really a job fair. I mean, I guess you certainly could if you wanted. I think this is more of a time where you connect and learn more about that person, that alum guest. And if you wanted them to review, like say you hit it off and they offer, or you really want their insights on your resume, I think you can certainly ask that at a later time. So I would love, this was so meaningful to me. Thank you so much. I had some questions on my resume. Is it okay if I send it to you so I can get your feedback on it? I think would be really, really helpful. I think that is okay. Like I said, it's not a job fair, so they'll probably be like, what do I do with this paper? All right, Bobby, I think you had a question.
Hi, how are you, Isabel? Thank you so much
Good.
for holding this. I just wanted to let you know I am a professor here at USC, and I'm just kind of dropping in just to kind of see what you guys are up to. I'm thinking about applying at Rossier for my EDD. So I saw this event and wanted to just kind of poke in real quick. So I was just curious, and I'm sorry I was a couple minutes late, so I'm sorry if you've talked about this already. But some of the things that we talk about for our students is to find out exactly who's going to be at the event and then read their bios, study, uh, formulate a couple questions that you might have for them in advance. So that when you show up, you kind of feel like, you're already armed with some questions and you kind of have a little bit of a mission. I'm sure you mentioned that.
Yes, no, it's a good question. I did mention that. Thank you so much. So in the slides, we'll just go back to it. I did mention one of the first things that you should do is research who's coming.
Absolutely.
And we as a team have sent out the list of alumni guests who will be participating on Friday, as well as each of their LinkedIn profiles. So students can check out their LinkedIn, kind of prep ahead of time what questions they want to ask these alums based on where they work, what they do, where they've worked in the past. We also indicate their USC degrees, so they're all Rossier alums. I think most of them are Rossier. If not, they're USC alums. But, I would love to know how did they make the most of their time at Rossier? What advice would they give someone who is in that either in between phase of graduating, they're about to graduate, or first years? Like, I did first years under my belt. How do I make the most of my second year? So yes, we do that as well. We also plan to send out this program that Maritza, our GA, has put together, which includes their bio. So this is hot off the press, and we will send this to all of our RSVPs. And they can also review that before the event and ask meaningful questions and dialogues.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Mhm. Other questions? Bobby, what school do you work at within USC?
Oh, I am an assistant professor of practice at USC Thornton School, the music industry program.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm looking at the Rossier. Would this be something that I might jump over just to kind of maybe to speak with some of the graduates and just kind of are they PhDs or EDDs or
So this event is primarily for EC and PASA. So within higher ed, yes. We are encouraging our EDL students to attend, especially those who are interested in higher ed. Because you are a professor, you certainly can still attend and kind of learn more about how these folks, and in fact, I think we're going to have a cocktail table for faculty. We also have a faculty member who is from the research center at Rossier. So that's someone that you can also network at, even if you talk to 3 people, like that would be hopefully meaningful for you. Um, what else? Which program are you interested at Rossier?
it's the ED the it's the EDL
Okay,
online,
yeah.
in with the concentration in psychology.
Okay, yeah. So, um, you might get something out of it. Again, like I said, it's really geared towards EC PASA students and
Yeah.
I guess EDL students who are interested in higher ed, not necessarily professors or those who want to become professors. And I'll tell you, I'm just looking at the list. We'll have representation from athletics, community colleges, so counselors, research centers, enrollment management, so retention initiatives, student services, res life, private institutions, and student development. So if those areas pertain to you or are of interest to you, I think that could be helpful.
Are they Rossier graduates? They all are.
Most of them
Yeah.
are Rossier alums, yes.
Okay. And have they anyone gone through the program that I'm looking into?
You know what? Actually, there is she didn't go, she's a friend. She didn't go to Rossier for her EDD. She did her PASA degree, but she does have an EDD. Yes, I have someone else. Her name is Kalila Lauderdale. She has her EDL, I'm sorry, from Rossier. So that's someone that you might want to talk to.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Quick
Yes, thank
question.
you, Maritza.
So I'm in the EDL program, so I feel like I'm kind of in an odd spot because I feel like is this oriented towards student affairs only? Because I'm coming from the elementary world and getting my EDD and in EDL and instructional change through Rossier. So I'm trying to network with higher ed folks and possibly find folks to help me make that jump in the next few years or shortly after graduation from the EDD to higher ed.
Hmm.
Is that the
This is an
kind of
appropriate.
way to
Yeah, this is
benefit? Okay.
definitely, I think you'll definitely get something out of this. When I say EC PASA, I don't mean it's exclusive to EC PASA, but the reason why we created something like this, I think last year or the year before, is because we had a career fair specific for like K-12 folks. But we didn't have anything really for higher ed individuals. And so this networking with the higher ed pros is really geared towards that. We don't really call it a job fair because it's not necessarily like we have employers. I mean, especially with higher ed, it's not cyclical, meaning we have just-in-time hires. Whenever a position's available, someone hires.
Right.
So with that, I think it's entirely beneficial for you to attend because you can network with other higher ed folks, not just student affairs, not just career services, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just wanted to
Hmm.
verify because I know in our program it's structured to have all of the concentrations. So whether they're ed psych folks or, ed leadership or higher ed, we're all intermixed in this first year because it's our first
Hmm.
year together. But I just wanted to make sure that that was kind of the focus. I'm not necessarily looking for a job, but I just want to make sure it's appropriate networking because I don't have
Yeah.
a master's in higher
Hmm.
ed. I have a master's in clinical mental health and a master's in teaching. So that's very different than the average higher ed folks. So thank you
Yeah,
so much for providing that insight.
absolutely. And I would say, I mean, use that to your advantage. Just now my career hat is at play. Because you don't necessarily have a master's in student affairs or higher ed, that is what makes you uniquely qualified for a future position because you have ties to Rossier with your program. You understand the higher ed landscape, or you will have a better understanding of that. And you have a special degree. I'm sorry, I forgot what you said, but a degree
I
that is
have many degrees.
exactly, yeah, that's outside of higher ed. So you have, like, in a way, quite a unique perspective from an outside lens that maybe someone like me who's only had higher ed experience might kind of not see. So I would say you work it, use it to your advantage. And that's something that you could possibly ask these higher ed folks, these alum guests on Friday. Like, listen, I'm getting my EDL, I have my master's in blank. How did you work? Like, what would you say about my background? Like, if I'm interested in entering higher ed, what are some avenues that you think I should pay closer attention to? Or um, how does that fare or look like in your department or at your institution?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Someone also asked about sending follow-up emails about meeting at the event or to further connect. How long on average would I say to wait before following up? Generally between like maybe a week. 3 to 5 days, business days possibly. These people are busy. Obviously, they have jobs. They're taking time. We're not paying them to come here. Like, they're just out of the kindness of their hearts. They just really want to connect with students. So I would say you will most likely gain positive results, not only in meeting with them, but also in your follow-up email. Still, if they don't get back to you, I think it's appropriate to ping them, connect with them, um, maybe in a week's time, and remind them, like, thank you again so much. I know you're so busy. I really hit it off with you, or I really was intrigued or interested in blah. I just wanted to continue that dialogue, that conversation. Would love to set up another time to talk to you. Other questions? This is so exciting. How are we feeling? I know I keep asking that, but I feel like you guys are feeling good. Okay, cool. No other questions? Okay, well, with that, I plan to send out this recording. It might take a few days because we go through our comms department, but in the meantime, I will be sending out the program to all of our RSVPs. So if you haven't RSVP'd for our event on Friday, please be sure to do that. I will also give you back some time so that you can practice that elevator pitch and make sure that you research the alums who are coming. With that said, thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you all on Friday. All right, take care. Bye.